the madness that is the NBA trade deadline. I cannot keep up with any of this stuff. I know one thing. Philadelphia 76ers are kind of sitting in the back seat of the car right now. We need a little front seat driving right here. Do we not? Need a little more activity, a little buzz. And with that, we welcome in our Sixers insider. Does a great job covering the squad for Sixers Wire as well. Our guy, our NBA guru, that is Mr. Kai Carlin. What do you say, Kai?
What's going on, Rich? How are you today?
I'm doing well. Hope all is well with you. And let's get right into it. I mean, are you a little surprised right now? I mean, right as we stand, Ben Simmons still on the roster, right? And now there's reports that they're open to bringing him back. I want to get your thoughts on that first and foremost. And then you got the move for Korkmaz, bringing him back, and then Andre Drummond, which in itself, you can write a comedy bit on that. But first and foremost, a little surprised that Simmons is still on the roster.
No, I'm not. I still think he's going to get traded, but I don't. It's not a surprise to me that he's still on the roster right now because Morey's asking price is very high. I mean, the team wants an all-star. They want picks, as they should. I mean, listen, everybody looks at Ben's playoff performances, but I think we all still need to kind of sit back and realize that this kid's still 25, a three-time all-star, two-time all-defensive first team, and an all-NBA member in 2020. So it's not like Ben Simmons is, he's still a very good player. So it's understandable why the asking price is high. I do believe that he will be traded before opening night. I think we'll see a deal happen, though, closer maybe to training camp at the end of September. That's just kind of how I think it's going to go down. And I think that's because there's going to be a lot of negotiations between a lot of different teams and really trying to figure out like a fair deal for both sides and going from there. But it's not a surprise to me that he's still on the roster right now.
Okay, a couple things. When I hear guys like you that covered the team that knew the NBA, and they sit there and say, well, he's 24, 25, he's still a great player, this, that, the other thing, then you almost start to think, well, then why the hell in the world do they even want to consider trading him? That's number one. And who ultimately is kind of going to decide what the fair value is for Ben Simmons? Because I'm reading these reports, 3, 4 first-round picks. That's just absurd.
Well, to answer your first question, I believe they want to trade him because I feel like you have to be kind of in win-now mode, right? I mean, Joel Embiid's 27. He's entering his prime. And this is just my opinion. I feel like Joel Embiid's prime is going to be a shorter time than other stars' primes just because of how many injuries Joel has taken in his career. And maybe his body just won't be able to hold up as long as maybe other stars. So who knows how long Embiid's prime is going to be. So I feel like if you're the Sixers, you have to think win now, which is why, as good as Ben Simmons is, Obviously, the jump shot is still a huge thing. The poor free throw shooting is a huge thing. Like, are you willing to wait for Ben to develop this and really become a championship-winning, win-now type of player? Or do you want to just trade him to bring in that championship-winning, win-now type of player? Because it's clear that Ben still needs developing, and I don't know if the Sixers really want to sit there and wait for him to develop when Joel is in his prime and dominating the league as much as he is. You should be thinking win now.
Yeah.
And I don't think Ben right now is a win now type of player is what I'm saying. Like he can still be that guy. He's obviously accomplished so much, but it's one of those things where that would kind of be the risk in moving Ben.
Listen, it's a fair point. I just feel as though that window of opportunity, that championship window, is closing by each passing moment, and
closing rather quickly.
Yeah, and that's exactly how I feel. I think that's exactly how a lot of people feel. And I mean, look, are they going to be stuck in a position here where their hands forced, where you're waiting too long to trade this guy, and then all of a sudden the value drops a little bit, and you don't get fair return?
That would be. That's another huge question that they're going to have to figure out. Because you just kind of mentioned the championship window is kind of closing pretty quickly. Think about it. The Milwaukee Bucks are the defending champions, and they added Bob Hood today. That's another really good perimeter scorer. They did lose P.J. Tucker, but Tucker went to Miami. And, I mean, we all saw the moves Miami made with Lowry and Tucker. They brought back Robinson. I thought they brought back a couple other key pieces. And then the Nets just added Patty Mills. And then there's Chicago. Even Chicago also with Zach LaVine, Lonzo Ball. They added DeMar DeRozan today. And you add that to Nikola Vucevic. The Bulls are going to be a team that's going to be on the rise. Then there's Atlanta, who they just beat the Sixers, and they're in the Eastern Conference Finals. Then there's Boston too. I mean, the Celtics could probably take a step back again, but the Boston figures to at least be back in the mix a little bit. And if you're the Sixers, you're kind of sitting around, and your two major moves have been re-signing Furkan Korkmaz and bringing in Andre Drummond, which came out of left field completely. And it's one of those things to where if you're the Sixers, you got to figure something out now, because Philadelphia is kind of in a position where other teams are catching up, and they're catching up rather quickly.
Yeah, you mentioned Drummond too. I mean, here's a player that Embiid and him have had this just history, this long history of not liking each other, going back and forth on and off the court on social media, and now you're going to pair them together, and you're going to ask Drummond to come in and do something he hasn't done in his career, and that's come off the bench, number one, and then you certainly couldn't keep him and Simmons on the floor at the same time because they're hellacious free throw shooters.
Right. It's kind of like the Dwight Howard thing. And honestly, Rich, I mean, I feel like Dwight Howard filled his role very well last year, and I feel like he's going to be a big loss to the Lakers. But when Joel was out, they couldn't start Dwight with Ben because Dwight is a poor free throw shooter. So remember, Doc would turn to Mike Scott to start in that position when Joel couldn't play. So it's just like it's kind of like what are we really doing here? You're doing the same thing you just did last year, and as you mentioned, Andre Drummond is such a weird fit because it's like he really only does one thing at the elite level, and that is rebound. I mean, he's not really a great post-up player. He obviously can't shoot outside the paint. Obviously not a great free throw shooter. He's not really a great defender either. So it's kind of like Drummond's just going to bring rebounding. That's kind of it. So it's just, I mean, they're getting him on the vet minimum. So if it doesn't work, then no skin off their nose. But it's definitely an odd signing.
Yeah, I mean, would you have preferred them to try to re-sign Howard?
I would have preferred Howard, but even if you couldn't get him, bring back Tony Bradley. I mean, the Thunder made him an unrestricted free agent. So try to bring back Bradley, who I thought played very well for them last year before he was dealt for George Hill. And speaking of Hill, I mean, they're planning on waiving Hill ahead of his contract guarantee deadline. So
that was a bad signing. I mean that move itself, right? He had the injuries. He really, it just didn't work out.
No, for sure, 100% agreed. But I guess the point I'm trying to make is you gave up a nice young big man, a promising young big man for this veteran guard who they expected to help them in the playoffs. And while Hill's numbers on paper in the playoffs were actually pretty solid when you look at it, but when you look at specifically just the series with the Hawks, he was a mess. He shot 22.2% from three-point range in round two, and he was one of the many guys who had issues on the defensive end of the floor out on the perimeter. So it's a little disappointing, I guess, if you're a Sixers fan, to see them trade a young man like Bradley for Hill and then just waive Hill after just 16 games with the team. So I would have brought back Bradley. That would have been just me, though.
You mentioned these other teams in the Eastern Conference. I mean, obviously Atlanta locking up Trae Young. I thought the move that the Brooklyn Nets made, Patty Mills, I like that move. I do. And then let's not discount, you take a very good player out of the conference in DeRozan. I mean, it's just been crazy. And then now here's another thing, right? You still got Kawhi Leonard out there. Do you expect Kawhi to re-sign with the Clippers?
All signs point to the Clippers. I mean, I'm actually surprised it hasn't happened yet. But I know Chris Haynes reported it, Woj reported it, Sham. So, he's going back to the Clippers. So.
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of waiting to see the other shoe to drop. So, if he re-signs with the Clippers, can you see any scenario like a sign and trade?
What do you mean?
So let me ask you something. If you were the Philadelphia 76ers, would you the Clippers sign Kawhi Leonard? Would the Sixers, do you think they would engage with maybe another team aside a trade to bring Leonard here and then to ship out Simmons, in addition to draft picks?
I mean, I would do that in a heartbeat if I was the Sixers, but I don't think it's possible just because, literally, just from reading the reports from Haynes, Woj, and Shams, it sounds like Leonard to the Clippers is a done deal, and it's going to be a long-term extension. But if there was any way to do that, Rich, I would do that in a heartbeat. I would move Ben for Leonard, and I wouldn't even think twice.
What about for Porzingis?
Oh, not for Porzingis. Absolutely not. No way.
He's too injury prone, but when he's on the floor, he's a great player, but he's just too injury prone.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And on top of that, I don't think a Porzingis and Embiid fit would even. I don't even know if I would even entertain that thought, especially after watching the Horford and Embiid fit. Now, granted, Porzingis is a different player than Horford, but the whole twin tower thing just does not work anymore in this league.
Would you look at the Lakers right now and the moves that they've made and say, all right, you got to put them in play now in the Western Conference going into next season?
I'll be honest. I feel like even before they added, Carmelo and Malik Monk, and Malik Monk is a guy I thought the Sixers should have definitely looked at, just because he had a breakout year for Charlotte last year, and I thought he would have been a really good addition here too. Patty Mills would have been another really good addition for Philadelphia, and the fact that he went to a Eastern Conference rival in Brooklyn is just that's disappointing. But no, I feel like even before these moves, I still had the Lakers in the mix next year just because it's LeBron and AD. Like I'm telling you, I feel like the 4 teams that finished in the bubble in 2020, Miami, LA, Denver, Boston, 3 of those teams lost in round 1, and Denver obviously got swept in round 2. But I feel like the only reason why those 4 teams, I should say, they got bounced so early is because of they had all 4 of the teams had a short off season. All 4 teams are dealing with injuries, and I think Miami and the Lakers are actually dealing with COVID issues as well, and that's why they got bounced round 1. So I feel like in a normal off season, normal times, both the Lakers and the Heat would have gone further than, and I think the Celtics would have as well, would have gone further than how they finished. So the Lakers, to me, next year were always going to be in the mix just because of LeBron and AD. That's just how I see them.
I'm looking at the Lakers right now. You think it was maybe 10 years ago, Ariza, Howard, Westbrook, Carmelo Anthony. I mean, this is, you got 5 players who are older than 35, 8 players over 32. I mean, look, if it's not now, when? If you're the Lakers, and this is basically a year removed from winning the title.
Yeah, I mean, listen, they won the title in 2020. Obviously, they got bounced round 1 by the Suns in 6 games. I put a lot of that on the injuries to both Davis and LeBron. I feel like if LeBron and AD were healthy, the Lakers win that series. Because, they had a 2-1 lead, but then the injuries to Davis popped up, and LeBron clearly wasn't fully healthy, and it is what it is. Heading into next season, I don't like the Russell Westbrook fit. I will admit that. I feel like that's such a weird addition considering Westbrook's not a shooter.
Yep.
And LeBron isn't exactly a great 3-point shooter either. So I will admit that's a weird addition. However, I'm not doubting a team with LeBron James on it. That's just me. So even though LeBron's obviously getting older, another year older, blah blah blah, Father Time is undefeated and all, but it seems like LeBron has been beating Father Time's butt over the past couple of years. So I'm not doubting a LeBron James-led team.
They just signed Kendrick Nunn, I think, to a 2-year contract as well for $10 million. All these ring chasers.
There's a lot of them, aren't there? They're trying to get a ring out here.
Oh, man. All right, well, look, keep us posted on any movement with Simmons. Keep doing a great job with Sixers Wire and everything. And listen, before I let you get out of here, do you believe he gets moved, let's say, within the next 2 to 3 weeks?
No, I don't think so. I mean, just for me, Rich, it would make more sense to. It really would make sense to me if Morey doesn't get the package that he expects.
Yeah.
that he can get, then it makes sense to just kind of bring him back and try again. However, if Ben is still the same player and he's still not taking jump shots and he's still struggling from the free throw line and he's still the same player offensively, then you have to move him at the deadline. And then by then, Rich, you brought it up earlier, his value would be as low as it ever was.
You're hedging your bet a little bit, are you not?
Yeah, definitely. And for me, I feel like Ben is going to be moved by around training camp. So I would say sometime in September.
All right, I'm going to hold you to that one.
Sounds good. You can hold me to that one.
I appreciate it. I know.